Hello and welcome to Micro Minute. My name's Marty Jobson, and today I thought what we do is a little bit of microscopy, and I was going to show you some plants, some carnivorous plants, a little bit of botany. So, okay, the plants are down here. You can't really see them, so let's switch on my other camera. Ooh, hold on a second, I've just lost my control surface. Let's switch on my other camera. I'll turn that one off. I'll put myself up in the top right hand corner there. So okay, here I've got some carnivorous plants, a few different types, and I'll sort of rattle through them as quick as I can. So I'm going to pick this up so that I can show you what there is to see. Okay, so the first one is this one here, and this one, ooh, where's my finger? There it is. This one is what's known as a sundew plant. In this case, it's the Cape sundew, or Drosera capensis is its Latin name, or its sort of botanical name. This thing comes from, as its name suggests, from South Africa, which is why it's called Cape sundew. And it's very common as a sort of, if you're going to buy one of these, this is probably the sort you'll buy because they grow very easily. I've got another slightly more sickly looking one, which is quite pretty under the microscope, which I wanted to show you. This one is also from South Africa, and this one is called, one's Drosera nidiformis, doesn't have a common name, and I'll tell you why I'm going to show you that one later. And then this plant here, this one, well, it's related, well, in fact it's not really related, but it's similar, and you'll see why later on. So, okay, I'll put this back down here. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to snip a leaf off from the Cape sundew so I can put it under the microscope. And this is the leaf that I decided I was going to snip here. Ooh, helps if I snip the right side of the tweezers. There we go. That goes under here like that. Ugh. It's very sticky. So sundew plants, they are, we do have native sundews in this country, and let's just zoom in a little bit. There we go. And I'll turn that on for you. There we go. So this is what the sundew looks like underneath the microscope. Ugh. And it's getting all sticky and claggy. Because the sundew plant is characterised, and the reason why they're all called sundews is because they're covered in these hairs. The leaves are covered in these hairs, and at the end of each hair there is a gobbet of sort of sticky goo, okay? And you can see them. So here's the leaf here, the green bit, and these bits here, these are all they're actually called tentacles, covered in the sticky goo. So I'm going to zoom in on some of these and show you what's going on inside if I focus carefully. And then if I'm clever, I can adjust the lighting so that you can see. Right there, can you see? So those are all the hairs sticking up from the surface of the leaf, okay, all the tentacles. Here's a tentacle. And at the end of the tentacle, there's a drop of goo. And there's a little sort of ball at the end. This is like a little lollipop head, and that's the bit that's secreting this goo. And what these plants do is they create this sort of beautiful glistening surface which attracts flies. The flies come along and then they get stuck. And then what happens is the tentacles literally fold over them and entrap the little insects. And the insects then suffocate because they get so covered in this goo, they can't breathe, they suffocate, they die. And then the slightly more insidious thing is inside each one of these little droplets, okay, there is also a whole load of digestive enzymes, okay, and those begin to digest the insect. Now, I picked this leaf deliberately because I noticed that it carried a gruesome cargo. Can you see that? This is slightly disgusting, but that's nature for you. There, lurking on this leaf, is one of its prey. This is an insect. This is a tiny little fly. These are little compost flies that we suffer from because we have a lot of potted plants. And that compost fly has been attracted to, stuck down. You can see that the corpse body, I mean, it's long dead. I'm getting a lot of flicker on my microscope today. And you can see, if I focus, can you see how the tentacles, like these tentacles here, are kind of curled over onto it. So as soon as this thing touched, all the other tentacles curled over, and it has begun to be digested. And then what happens is, if you look around, you can find eventually the little sort of the remains of the fly, which is literally just a desiccated husk, is left and eventually kind of falls off. So these things, and what will also happen if I zoom right out, is that actually there's a second corpse just there. But you can see that this leaf here is actually curling up, and the whole leaf will curl over. If the prey is big enough, the whole leaf wraps itself round it, so that it can get covered in this horrible goo. Right, I'm going to take that off, and you can see it leaves a sort of a sticky mess. I'll put that there. Because what I wanted to show you was, I'll show you, so that's one of the specimens. I'm going to show you the other specimen now, this one here. But for that, I'm going to put the whole plant under it. And to do that, I've got to wind up my microscope as high as it goes, and then we can get the entire plant underneath. Right, let's have a look. And then you can see, if I try and find a bit that's actually low enough for me to focus on, you can see the whole, bits of moss there. And the reason I like this one, as you can see, this one's got little sort of rounded leaves, and this one's much more like the sort of sundew that you get in this country, which is called rotundifolia, or the sort of the common sundew. And you get that. There's a couple of different species, but the rotundifolia is the one. You find it in marshes and bogs. You don't really get it in the south of England, but you certainly get it in Yorkshire. I know you can find them up at Malham Tarn. Up there, there's a boggy bit there, and you can go right up into Scotland. You get them all up in Scotland and places like this. But if this settles down and stops flickering, you can see here is the leaf, okay, and the leaf is covered in these globules. But the nice thing about this is at the end of each globule, the little sort of the lollipop stick that secretes the goo is bright red. So if I focus in on this, you can see there they all are, like little red lollipops, waiting, tempting the insects. Come to me, there is a treat, and then blah, they're digested away. But they're really rather beautiful to look at under the microscope. So this is the sundew plant, but there's one other I wanted to show you, and that is, and I'm going to go back to this camera, this plant here. This plant is called pinguicula, or pings for short, or the common butterwort, and it's very common in this country. But when you look at this under the microscope, this is also a carnivorous plant, but you might think, well, how is it carnivorous? Where is the carnivorous bit? But as soon as you look at it under the microscope, you can see exactly what's going on. So I put the microscope back on, and here is the centre of the plant. It's rather beautiful to look at, again, under the microscope. And can you now see the whole surface of this plant is, again, covered in tiny, tiny little droplets. And each one of those is on a little stick with a ball at the end, and it's exactly the same as the Drosera. It doesn't do the thing where it kind of moves its bits to engulf the insects. What happens is insects will just literally land on this and wriggle around, get caught. And obviously they're very small insects. I'm going to zoom in on this so that you can really see some of those gobbets of liquid. And if I let's see if I can find a good bit where we can really see that. I need to I go right in. So I'm zooming way in here. And again, if I change the lighting, that was pretty good there, like that. You can see the whole surface of the leaf is covered in these tiny, tiny, tiny little, and let's see, how big are they? How big are those? If I get the magnification set. So there's a scale bar down here. So if you look down here, there is a scale bar now that is now correct. So that bar from left to right is 0.5 millimetre. So these things are a fraction of a millimetre, about 0.1 of a millimetre tall, and the tiny little gobbets of the stuff on them. And then you can see the whole surface of the leaf is coated in these, and it's an absolutely lethal place for any insect that's small to land, because it will just get stuck. And then what happens is it gets digested, and then on the surface of the leaf there are other special cells that will soak those juices in. And the reason why it digests plants like this, digests animals like this, is because of where it lives. These live in bogs where there's very little nutrition, there's very little nitrogen, and plants need nitrogen, all things need nitrogen to grow, to make proteins. So that's just a little look. Let's zoom out, because I think these are rather beautiful. Oops, where is it? There it is. Just focus on that like that. Isn't that pretty? I'll go right in on it. It's got the new leaves coming up in the middle. As always, thanks go to the lovely people at... Which way is it? It's that way, isn't it? At Zeiss, who provide me with these microscopes. But also, and this is one for you, so I do the Microminute 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Do tune in. This coming Wednesday, I've got an extra special treat, because what's happening is I'm working with Zeiss, and I'm going to be using a super duper massive, ridiculously expensive microscope that is actually sat in Cambridge. But I'm not breaking social distancing, because I will be operating it sat here at this table, and I will then be using that microscope to show you butterfly wings under a scanning electron microscope, and that will allow me enormous levels of magnification, so we can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and see fantastic stuff. So join me 12:30 on Wednesday for that, and hopefully, fingers crossed, technology all works and I can show you butterfly wings under a scanning electron microscope for real, for lives. Okay, thanks very much. My name's Marty Jobson, and this has been Microminute. Bye bye.